Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a case so shocking and gruesome, it earned the perpetrators a nickname straight out of a horror movie, the SCISSOR Sisters. This story takes us to Dublin, Ireland in 2005, and it's a chilling reminder of what happens when abuse, addiction, and a toxic family environment collide. Our story begins on March 30th, 2005, when a seemingly ordinary morning walk quickly turned into a scene of pure terror. A pedestrian walking near the Royal Canal in Dublin noticed something floating in the water. At first glance, it looked like a discarded mannequin, but on closer inspection, it was undeniably human, a pair of severed legs. Police immediately descended on the scene, and as they searched the area, the horror only deepened. They recovered more body parts, hands, and a torso clad in a recognizable football jersey. The victim had been meticulously mutilated, his body separated into 8 distinct pieces, with some internal organs missing entirely. Forensics confirmed that all the remains belonged to a single man, likely in his 30s or 40s, and they estimated he had been dead for about 10 days, probably since the St. Patrick's Day festivities. The key piece of evidence was that jersey. Police circulated pictures, and weeks later, on May 9th, a call finally came in. A man identified the jersey as belonging to his friend, Farah Swaleh Nur. Farah was an immigrant from Kenya, and crucially, he was living with his girlfriend, Kathlyn Malhell, and her 2 daughters. Now let's talk about the key players here. Farah Swaleh Nur was not an easy man. He had a history of violence, including a past conviction for sexually abusing a disabled minor. He was known to be temperamental, often resorting to physical violence. Then we have the Malhell family, headed by Kathlyn. Kathlyn was a single mother of 6, but her home life was defined by chaos, alcohol, and conflict. 4 of her children had thankfully managed to escape the environment. The 2 who remained were Linda, the eldest, who had dropped out of school and experienced a failed early marriage, and Charlotte, the youngest, who was deep into alcohol and drug addiction, struggling with prostitution and continuous legal troubles. Kathlyn was dating Farah, who, tragically, replicated the abusive behavior of her previous husband. Despite the obvious danger, she kept him around. Police quickly focused on Kathlyn's apartment. Neighbors recalled seeing Farah there late on the night of March 17th, partying with Kathlyn, 31-year-old Linda, and 25-year-old Charlotte. When questioned, the 3 women stuck to the same story. Farah had simply left and gone back to his home country. But the police weren't buying it. There were no official records of him leaving Ireland. Suspicion ramped up when Kathlyn abruptly moved units within the apartment complex. When police searched her old unit, they found faint but undeniable traces of blood on the floors and walls, traces someone had tried very hard to clean. The breakthrough, however, came from an anonymous phone call. The caller claimed to know exactly who was responsible: Linda and Charlotte. This tipster was soon identified as James, the women's brother, who was serving time in prison. James told investigators that Kathlyn had visited him and confessed. She said Linda and Charlotte were the murderers, and she was just a helpless bystander. Armed with this information and DNA confirmation that the blood was indeed Farah's, the police moved in. On August 3rd, Linda, Charlotte, and Kathlyn were arrested. Under intense pressure, Linda finally broke. She recounted the horrifying events of that night, giving the police the full bloody chronology. It was March 20th, a few days after St. Patrick's Day. The 4 of them, Farah, Kathlyn, Linda, and Charlotte, were drinking heavily. Kathlyn and the girls were also using drugs. Unbeknownst to Farah, Kathlyn secretly crushed up ecstasy and slipped it into his drink. By 8 p.m., they were back at the apartment, completely wasted. Farah, now affected by both the alcohol and the drugs, became verbally aggressive towards Kathlyn. After the argument settled, Farah turned his attention to Linda. He started sexually assaulting her, touching her and grabbing her hands, ignoring her desperate pleas to stop. This was the final straw. Seeing her sister being attacked, Charlotte snapped. She stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and returned to the room. Without hesitation, she began stabbing Farah repeatedly in the neck. Farah tried to stumble into the bedroom to escape, but he collapsed. Linda, fueled by rage and desperation, grabbed a hammer and began striking Farah's head over and over again. Charlotte came back, delivering final fatal blows. Farah suffered a total of 27 stab wounds, puncturing his lungs and liver. In a moment of terrifying drug-induced euphoria, Linda and Charlotte screamed happily and hugged each other after the murder was complete. Kathlyn, their mother, did nothing but watch. Their next act was even more macabre. They dragged Farah's body into the bathroom, and, together, they systematically dismembered him into 8 separate pieces, even removing his vital organs. The body parts were stuffed into black plastic bags. Charlotte attempted to call her father, John, to help them dispose of the body, but after John saw the horrific scene, he fled, wanting nothing to do with it. So the 3 women took the pieces themselves, dumping the plastic bags into the Royal Canal. But the horror didn't end there. They still had Farah's head, which they had placed in a travel bag. Before burying the head in a park later that day, they stopped. They actually stopped for lunch, dining at a local spot with the severed head of their victim sitting in a bag right beside them. When the trial finally came in October 2006, the results reflected the degrees of their involvement. Charlotte Malhell was found guilty of first-degree murder, meaning the jury believed she acted with malice and intent. She was sentenced to life in prison. Linda Malhell, who was seen as acting more in the heat of the moment due to the provocation of the assault, was convicted of second-degree murder and received a 15-year sentence. Kathlyn Malhell, the mother who orchestrated the initial poisoning and then helped hide the evidence, fled before the trial, but later surrendered. She was charged with concealing evidence, providing false information, and cleaning the crime scene, and received a 5-year sentence. The case of the SCISSOR sisters is a dark stain on Irish true crime history, illustrating the shocking extent of violence that can be perpetrated when familial bonds are twisted by addiction and abuse.